All right, welcome back. It's time for our conversation. Dr. Franklin Ngwu, an Associate Professor of Strategy, Corporate Governance and Risk Management, Lagos Business School, is joining me right now via Skype. Hello, Dr. Ngwu, and thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
Good morning, Nancy. We are fine. It's a bright day in Lagos after a heavy rain yesterday.
Okay, now let's start from there. Since there's been so much agitation, at least in the country, in the last few weeks. Restructuring, we'll come back to that a bit. Not the political restructuring, I don't want to go there, but a bit of politics is also involved. But let's start with the agitations, this watershed moment that we're having right now in the country. A lot of young people are on the streets talking about end SARS. Now is end SWAT. What are your views, if you take a look at it from the economic prism of it?
I think that the protest, even though it's described as end SARS, it's more or less a protest about so many other issues in Nigeria. It's about the protest about the poverty rate, the protests about inequality, the protest about unemployment, the protest about insecurity, the protest about so many social problems. But of course, you know, the SARS one has been very, very prominent. So it more or less, they are just using it as a launch pad in terms of the challenges that Nigerians are facing, particularly the youths. So Nigerians are protesting about the leadership failure in different levels, from the federal government to the state government to the local government. And I remember one of them said that he prefers the protest to continue because he's been eating better going to the protest and staying at home. So for Nigerian youths to be talking like that, it means that there's a big challenge. And it's also very important that the government listens to the yearnings and warnings from the youths about the challenges that are facing from the federal government to the state government and to the local government. And we've been saying this for the past few years. And it seems that people didn't know that this will come to this. But it's also an indication that the frustration is increasing and is boiling out, and it's actually a good time to really nip it on the bud in terms of how the government will quickly and seriously start addressing certain issues facing the youths.
Do you think that the government is handling this well?
They are trying in terms of first of all, the IG has disbanded SARS. We now have SWAT, but more is demanded. But I keep emphasizing that it's not just about the police. If we focus on the police, for instance, there is need for total reform of the police force. Not just about saying we should reform, but in terms of fundamental and serious reform, starting from the way we recruit the police. It's not just about saying we're going to reform police, but we have to look at the fundamental issues facing the police force, their remuneration, their recruitment, their training, their skill set, and all that. So it's not just about IG announcing that SARS has been disbanded or SARS has been changed to SWAT and all that and all that. Nigerians require more, but I keep emphasizing this is not just about police. It means that Nigeria also requires fundamental reform in terms of our structure of governance, in terms of the way we do certain things, in terms of our policies, and in terms of how do we make sure that we have the appropriate fiscal and monetary policies to address so many social challenges facing Nigerians, particularly the youths. The unemployment is increasing, poverty rate is increasing, and of course, unless you address some of these issues, the issues will continue. So with regards to the police, of course, SARS is more or less a federal controlled police. So the question is, if they are in different parts of Nigeria being controlled from Abuja, there is an issue with that. So that also requires, that's why I'm saying that the reform will need to be deeper, need to be broad, and need to also address issues beyond the police, but about Nigeria as a country and as an economy.
Do you think that the government and Nigerians are indeed ready for reforms? Absolute reforms or strategic reforms in different sectors, because like you said earlier, that this is beyond the end SARS. Because when people take a look at it, the young people are on the street and calling for a change. They are being molested, they are being arrested, they are being killed. Even this morning, I got some reports about some people protesting in Lagos, and some talks just came and started attacking them. We don't know where those talks are coming from. So do you think that the government is really ready for reforms? That we should take it holistically and reform the country? Like I say sometimes on the show, it's our country. There's no need deceiving ourselves. Let's fix it because we don't have another country.
The issue is whether the government is ready or not. There is something that they said it is something that its time has come. So, and also something that they call a tipping point. So the country is approaching a tipping point. So it is actually in the best interest of the government to start listening and start doing something quickly. I have also written that this opportunity that we have should not be wasted, in the sense that we all want the federal government to succeed. We all want the different state governments to succeed. So this opportunity actually is an opportunity for PMB to build and create a lasting legacy, so that when he leaves office, Nigerians will remember him as one of the best presidents that Nigerians have had. In the sense for him to really quickly jump on the driver's seat and start implementing the necessary reforms needed. So whether they do it or they don't do it, the time has come and it has to be done. So it is better that it's done in a more structured, peaceful manner than if you wait until this kind of protest starts expanding, starts escalating. Of course, yesterday, we also heard that some youths in the north are saying that they're going to start protesting because of the insecurity in the north. So here in the south, mainly in the south, but also in some parts of the north, is about NSAS. So that tells you that it's not really about the specific like NSAS or insecurity. It's about the holistic issues that need to be looked into. And as I said, it is the best interest of the government to start doing it. And also, if you leave the federal government, you also go to the states. It also means that the state governors also need to know that even though this protest is targeting the federal government in terms of the federal police, the state governments also need to also start addressing fundamental development, growth issues in their respective states. Because all the people protesting are resident in different states in Nigeria. When they finish with SARS, if things are not done, the likelihood that other protests focusing on specific regions or states cannot be removed.
If we take a look at what the protesters are asking, the 5 for 5 demand, the presidential panel has approved it. How do you think that this should be handled moving forward? Because even with the handling of it by the federal government or by the police itself, by dissolving FSARS and creating the special weapons, anti-terrorism unit? Yes, SWAT, yeah. You know. It seems that is not enough. So itemize for me what you think the federal government should do, because you said earlier that this is beyond NSAS protest. It's about poverty, it's about unemployment. Inflation numbers just came in just like an hour or two ago. You're seeing inflation rising in the country, the highest in 32 months. And the president has said we should brace up for a recession. So it's not really good news economically for everyone, because it seems there's an economic undertone to all of this.
I think there are so many things that can be done. But I have earlier indicated that Nigeria, the coronavirus they said it killed more people with fundamental illness. So Nigeria has fundamental challenges. So what we are supposed to ask or do is, what are those challenges and what should be done about it? I've earlier indicated also that we need to fundamentally look at the country and say, the structure we have in terms of governing Nigeria, is it the right structure? The answer is no, it's not the right structure. We've used this for so many years, and the outcomes clearly show that the structure needs to change. So we are using a structure that is unsuitable for the environment. That needs to change. There is also need, in terms of quick one that we can do, there is need for the federal government to quickly also hasten the selling of some assets. There is also the need to unify the exchange rate. There is also the need to ensure effective and proper budget implementation. There is also the need to say, what are the critical ways we can use to reduce unemployment, we can use to reduce insecurity, we can use to reduce poverty, and there are so many factors that you can consider which can be implemented, which requires partnership, federal government, state government, local government, the private sector, and other stakeholders. So there are a few things that can be done, and which if they start implementing it right away, of course, it will signify and tell the youth and other Nigerians that the government is serious about it. Not when there is increasing poverty, insecurity, unemployment. We see many of our politicians already preparing for 2023 election. You see state governors who their level of poverty, the level of poverty in their states are above 70%. And many of them are planning to run for president, many of them are planning to run for Senate. So they're not even addressing the fundamental challenges in their different states. They are focusing on higher offices. So until we start doing certain things that signify seriousness, commitment, in terms of the challenge that we have in Nigeria, the issues will continue.
Hello YouTubers, welcome to Moneyline with Nancy TV YouTube channel. This is where we provide you with instructive business directions, processes, and guidance to help you assess the right resources to fund your businesses to withstand every form of internal and external shock. You will find here awesome informative videos on business, entrepreneurship, and lifestyle just to help you make informed business and financial decisions. Punch the subscribe button and let us drive you through the world of business. Please follow all our social media platforms on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and follow us for latest updates on our website. Doctor, do you think that the culture of accountability has just started by way of this protest by Nigerians to our leaders? You just said something now that we're seeing already undertones around 2023 presidency. People that we know that there's still poverty, unemployment in their states, they want higher offices. So with this culture you're seeing right now around the country in the form of protest, do you think that it's generating to an accountability culture by young people to say, what are our leaders really doing? We don't want this anymore. If you give us something, this is not what we want. Please give us what we want.
I think the consciousness is increasing. And of course, with social media and with technology, is also helping as well. So they're focusing on NSAS now. Once they finish this, the likelihood that other issues, that they will become more conscious about other issues is very much there. And until you address the challenges facing the youths, of course, the consciousness will continue. So it is, to answer your question directly, it is increasing accountability. But of course, it is not yet enough. The government must demonstrate seriousness and commitment in terms of showing that accountability. I was reading one of the messages going around, and they say that in the budget, we have billions or millions budgeted for reading newspaper. We have senator salaries, we have House of Reps member salaries that are far, far more what they're supposed to be earning. And you are paying the police about 30,000 naira. And if you go to their barracks, you see the situation. So the question is, unless we address some of these issues, of course, the accountability will increase, but the government must address their challenges to also signify to the people that are actually addressing the issue that they're facing. If they don't do it, the pressure, the demand, the protests, and demands for accountability will definitely be on the rise.
And we're still talking about even accountability, or we're talking about agitations. I also read something, I think was it in Vanguard newspapers. Let me quickly bring it up so that I say the right thing. It was actually talking about agitations for 12 states, that's the region. I don't know if I guess you have seen it, definitely, because I know you're a writer and you read widely too. What do you think about the agitations by the northern leaders rooting for a 12-state structure and saying that there should be 100% resource control? And they said quite a whole lot of things. Let's merge House of Reps and Senate. We don't need this bicameral legislature. What do you think? Agitations everywhere in different forms.
Just a reflection of what we've been discussing, that I read what the Northern Group wrote and what they said. And to an extent, they have valid points. And of course, it's not only the northern group that is agitating for restructuring. There are so many. I'm not sure there's any part of Nigeria that is not asking for something, a kind of reform. So of course, we've had former President Obasanjo, from Wole Soyinka, recently Pastor Adeboye, Ohaneze, Middle Belt Forum, Northern Areas Forum. All groups are asking that there's need to sit back and rethink the country. So on that note, I've also argued that the structure we have in Nigeria is unsuitable. So I completely agree that there's a need for fundamental restructuring and reforming of Nigeria, particularly devolving powers from the central government. And that will also mean, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Doctor. Go ahead.
Okay, and that will also mean that the structures that we have in Nigeria need to change. So some of the items demanded by the Northern group, like merging the Senate and the House of Reps, I support it 100%. I don't think that we need two houses at the moment with all the money that we are spending on them. And of course, each of them will maintain a litany of aides. So there is really no need to have two Houses of National Assembly at the moment. There's also need for further reforms. So in terms of saying that they should devolve powers or make Nigeria about 12 states, I think it's a welcome development. It needs to be examined, it needs to be assessed to really understand the ones that are the best option for Nigeria. But in terms of moving powers from the federal government to the region to the state, it is a fantastic idea. What it will do, it will make Nigeria to move away from competition for power to competition for development, so that the different regions will start competing and the center will not be very attractive. But if you see what is going on now, every state governor wants to go to, once they are in the second term, the next plan is to go to the Senate. If they are in the first term, the plan is to win the second term. If they can't go to the Senate, they will start aspiring to be president or something like that. Because the attraction is at the center, because you control all the resources of the country, almost. So the question is, we need to reform the country. We need to move some items from even if we don't want to do politics, we can just say, let's move certain items from the exclusive list to the concurrent list controlled by the states and maybe residual to the local government.
Doctor, let me butt in here a bit, because we've been saying this for a very long time. A lot of people have been saying it, that the way Nigeria is structured, even economically, it's not viable, and we can't do much with what we have right now, since every attention is geared towards the center. For us to be able to do this, is the same of our leaders that would make this happen. The same leaders that are gaining from the current structure. The same leaders, the legislators that are getting perhaps 2 million naira monthly for newspapers, that will do this. Do you think that they will really want to wield that power to these agitations by Nigerians? The center itself. So what will make them do it?
Okay, that's what I'm trying to address. As I said earlier on, it's like a moving train. So Nigeria is getting to a tipping point. So it is in their own interest to support this movement, because you cannot stop it. And that's why I've called in my write-up on different occasions, I've said that the best person who will do this is PMB, because he's not going to contest election again, and his ambition to come back has been achieved. So it is in his own interest and in our love for him that the calls for restructuring are increasing. And I think that if he starts it, Nigerians will support him. He will have an overwhelming support, just the way Nigerians supported him when he ran for election. And there is no reason why he should not do it, because in 3 years' time, he will be described as a former president. But the question is what legacy is he leaving for Nigeria? And if he does this, there's no part of Nigeria that will not say this is the best president that we've had, because he will have handed over Nigeria a future that is guaranteed, a future that is bring freedom and opportunities for all Nigerians, especially the youths and our children. So I think it is is the right person who will say, National Assembly, we need to do this. We need to send a bill to them and say, these are some of the things I'm thinking and it needs to be done, and start pushing it. He has to call the governors and say, we are doing it. Also, the governors should also lead by example. I've actually argued also that the Nigerian Governors Forum, led by Governor Fayemi, of Ekiti State should actually say he has actually agreed that there is need for restructuring. So that they can actually say, we need to start doing this. I hope we are aware that you cannot do any rail between two states. You can't even do a rail within a state until you get permission from the federal government. You can't do anything on water until you get permission from the federal government. So even if we focus on infrastructure and say, how do we empower the subnationals to actually do more infrastructure in their respective states, and now allow them to start doing it. That's what we are saying. It's not when there is an election, there will be a refund to the states in terms of the money they've spent on constructing the roads belonging to the federal government. It shouldn't be like that. They shouldn't be sharing money before election to states that are constructed the roads of the federal government. Okay. So we should need to restructure to ensure that this is sustainable, this is institutionalized, this is lasting, and this is natural.
Let's take a look at the 2021 budget and let me get your views on that. I started the series on Monday looking at the budget from different perspectives, and my guests have shared their own views on it. But I want to take you specifically on what the Vice President said yesterday. There was a media roundtable yesterday evening. I was there. We asked questions on the economic sustainability plan. And when the Vice President was being asked about our debts moving higher, 31 trillion debt servicing, using to, vis-a-vis our revenue and all of that. And his response, and we took it earlier before you came on board, his response was like, come on, that there's no need to panic over our debts. We still have the capacity. He gave us the debt to GDP ratio, but he also was quick enough to say the issue is debt servicing to revenue. But for like a fiscal deficit of 5 trillion naira, we shouldn't be worried about it because it's not an individual, so to speak, that is taking that loan. We are a country. What is your own view about that?
Sincerely, I listened briefly on what the VP said, and I completely disagree. It is not the right way to see things. It is not the right thing to say. We are looking at a capital expenditure of about 3.85 trillion. And you're looking at debt service of 3.12 trillion. So your debt service is almost as high as your capital expenditure. We're talking about capital expenditure. On top of it, you're having a deficit of about 6.65 trillion. That means you're going to borrow more. So the question then is, when are we going to stop this continuous borrowing? It is not sustainable and it cannot continue. If the VP is saying that we shouldn't worry, that it's not one person that is going to pay it, we should also remind the federal government that it is Nigerians born and unborn that will pay this debt, and it's increasing. Remember also that once you do this, when you now look at recurrent expenditure, it's about 5.6 trillion. So where and when will Nigeria start expanding and growing? So it is, I read economics, and I've never seen where that kind of argument is used to buttress continuous and unending borrowing from the federal government. I've argued earlier on that there are so many things that we can do to address the debt challenge. There are so many things that we can do. I've said before that if we say you talked about economic sustainability plan. If we say from the sustainability plan and we use 200 billion from the 600 billion budget for agriculture and focus on planting economic trees, in 3 years' time, it will give us about 18 trillion naira. And we can start using it to pay in our debt. So this idea of keep borrowing is not one person, is Nigeria. We use so much money to bail out the banks.
Okay, Doctor, just quickly, because we have like a minute to go, and I want to chip this in, which is, there's no problem borrowing, is there? At least in economics, you should borrow, but you must have the capacity to pay back and borrow for productive things, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So what you have, or what most Nigerians have a problem with is, what are we borrowing for? Which the VP also told us yesterday that we should be worried about what we are borrowing for and what we are spending it on. The second leg of it also should be, what processes do you have to pay back that debt? Is there any process you're seeing? Is there anything tangible you're seeing from the government that we're doing to be able to pay back and on time?
There's a problem with borrowing. it's not about that you can borrow and you continue to borrow. So we'll be borrowing at a very low interest rate. And of course, because we've continued to borrow, the interest rate is going up now. So it's becoming commercial rates. So it's not about that we have committed to borrow and we continue to borrow. We should also ask ourselves, how come that other countries are not borrowing the way we are borrowing? How come that we are not building up our reserves so that we can start having our sovereign investment fund can continue to increase? It is time for us to sit back as Nigeria and say, with all our potentials, all our resources, all the things we can do, how do we quickly? That's what restructuring will do for us, so we can empower the regions and empower the states, and we reduce the debt of the federal government. It is not sustainable, and it cannot be justified as a way to move the country forward.
Okay. I think we'll leave it at that, Doctor. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Franklin Ngwu, who is an Associate Professor of Strategy, Corporate Governance and Risk Management at the Lagos Business School. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. But don't forget, you can join us online. Go on our YouTube channel right now. Subscribe. Find us on all other social media platforms. Be the best you can be. I am Nancy Nnaji. Don't forget to protect yourself. Mask up. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.